Hi, friends. I'm so glad that you guys are here today. In fact, I did recognize at least one person in the audience. So, hey, Steve. Great to see you on another Wednesday. This is a workshop that I have modified for both an interactive webinar, interactive like Zoom meeting, as well as an in-person workshop that I've been able to deliver at a number of different conferences across the nation. And I'm going to make some modifications to it today. So bear with me as some of those changes take place. I'm gonna go and well, first I'll describe who I am and what qualifies me to be here. My name is Bryn Lottig. I live in northern Wisconsin. And I have a master's in experiential education. I was the adventure program coordinator at an EL education school here in northern Wisconsin for 6 years before coming over to work at a summer camp. But the camp that I work at and that time in experiential education led me to just wholeheartedly believe that social emotional learning needs to be experiential and it can transform kids' lives. So when I met my co-founder, we developed a digital platform called Kikori to help democratize access to experiential education. We want more experiential ed in classrooms, and we want more kids outside of the classroom. But I live and work, play and recreate on lands that are the ancestral home of the Lake Superior Chippewa Band of Indians. And I am wondering, again, Matt already stole my thunder, but asking about where you live and where you work. And if you are familiar on the who the ancestral stewards of the land that you live on are. And while a land acknowledgement is really only one thing, the next step is taking action. And so to acknowledge the historical context of the land that we're on, along with really leaning into what does that mean and what are some next steps? So I believe in place-based education as well as culturally relevant, because what maybe the kids in my backyard need are different than the kids in your backyard. And so if this resonates with you, I would love for you to drop in the chat what that means to you. So and then moving on, typically I utilize Kolb's experiential learning cycle, which starts with active experimentation, reflection, a generalization, and then an application. So what that means is the experiential learning cycle starts with play. You reflect on what happened, why it happened, and what are you going to do next? I then take that to let's play during this webinar. Let's reflect on what that means, connect it to the brain science and grow your teaching practice. However, due to the format, we're going to flip it. And I'm going to jump through all of my slides to get to our content, and we'll come back to it. So thanks everyone for bearing with me. This guy, his name is Dr. Bruce Perry, and he's a neuroscientist. I'm merely an armchair neuroscience enthusiast, and he is credited by developing the neurosequential model of therapeutics. And teachers are not always, some of us are, shout out to any of the school social workers that are out there, but just because we are not therapists doesn't mean that what we do can't be therapeutic. And so one of the most remarkable things about our brain is its capacity to change and adapt to our individual world. Neurons and neural networks actually make physical changes when they're stimulated, and that is called neuroplasticity. And many of us who deal with adolescents, they are in their biggest neuroplasticity growth period of their entire lives, except for when they were toddlers. And so adolescence is defined as puberty until the time that participants, students, individuals are fully capable of taking care of themselves. And so that time right at the end there is actually changing. So it used to be 17, 18 years old. That period of adolescence was over. And now we're seeing adolescence stretch a little bit longer, which actually is really amazing for what that means for brain development. And here is a exceptionally simplified model of the brain. But if you think about the brain stem and what it is responsible for, some people might call it their lizard brain, but it's what controls your temperature, your respiration, how fast your heart beats. So that part is represented using your hand with your thumb. And as you move through the brain stem, you get into the parts of your brain that are in charge of arousal, sleep, appetite, movement, but also that limbic system for reward, memory, bonding, and emotions. And so that's represented here by the palm of my hand. And then your cortex, when it closes, this is where your creativity, thinking, language, values, all that higher level reasoning stuff happens. And so what Dr. Perry did is he created this neurosequential model. So it has to go in an order. So what happens is information comes in from outside of the brain, and it comes in through, and first you have to regulate. And then once that part of your brain is engaged and regulated, then you can relate, and then you can reason. And if you think about somebody who's maybe yourself or someone else, too hot, too tired, too just overwhelmed, that's why they call it flipping your lid. And your cortex is no longer engaged with these other parts of your brain. So it's a one-way street. And if you're not regulated, you cannot relate and you cannot reason. And so the order that we teach activities matters. And if we want to find purchase with our students, we have to think about how we are delivering information. So everybody learning anything is stressful, but if we can make stress predictable, rhythmic, and repetitive, then we can digest that learning and we can do it with the best parts of our brain. So I want you to think about, like, what order do you do activities? What about how you give instructions or ask questions? Regulating yourself can take as little as 30 seconds. So you can do it with movement or activities that are rhythmic and repetitive and predictable. So the initial activity that I had chosen is called ESP, and ESP is a rock, paper, scissors game, but instead of beating the other person, you're trying to match them. And this is an activity that can be done. You don't need to know the other person's name. You don't really need to talk. You don't have to touch them. And so at the beginning of the day, you could just go ahead and play rock, paper, scissors, but instead of it being competitive, make it collaborative. It makes them feel like they're on the same team, and it's regulating. Cooperative finger count is another rhythmic based activity where unique and common, tiny teach are relating activities, and paper tear then is a higher level problem solving activity, which really engages that reasoning or that cortex. But this is the cool stuff. Is so Dr. Perry came up with these ideas on how to engage the brain and how to work with the brain. But this is the Kessel wheel. And I think that there's some really great similarities, and maybe they're not known as well. And so Kessel is the collaborative for academic and social emotional learning. And Kessel is the gold standard of social emotional learning standards at this time. And they have 5 competencies. And if you look at them and you think about the wheel, so if you start here with self-management, that's our brainstem. Self-awareness, all the way to social awareness. So here's regulate, and then we start relating. And once we're relating to others, then we can engage that reasoning skill, like right here in that prefrontal cortex. And this has been buzzwords in the education system for a long time. I mean, we've been saying connection before content for ages, but this shows that these competencies and these learning standards follow that model as well. And so if you look at these things side by side, with this sequence of 5 activities that I can generally do with an audience in about 90 minutes, including offering the academic information, you can see that ESP, so rock, paper, scissors, that hits here, this regulating, it's rhythmic, it's repetitive, it's predictable. And then making everybody on the same team, it creates a sense of belonging, a sense of shared outcome. Cooperative finger count is another one where you rock, paper, scissors, and you put fingers out to add to a certain number. Unique and common and tiny teach are activities where you learn how to relate to the other person. And then paper tear, it's a problem-solving initiative that requires communication, critical thinking. And so to go through, I would love for you to drop in the chat if you are able, whether or not this is resonating. It's really hard for me just to be talking to Matt and the black screens, but I want to make this relevant for you and your practice. And we'll go back here. Yeah, Steve. So what Kikori is Kikori is a digital platform. It's an app, and it's available both on the App Store, Google Play, and on your desktop. And you can use these QR codes to download it. And what happens is when you log into the app, there are step-by-step instructions for all of these activities. And so here is a screenshot of what ESP looks like within the platform. And if I bring it up on my phone, I can show you that I created a LTC playlist that has these activities. So ESP, it has step-by-step instructions here, this white box for play. And it tells you everything that you need to know right at your fingertips so that you can run it. And it has facilitator tips so that you can search for it, have it at your fingertips, be able to run it for your students with efficacy. But then every single activity, regardless of who submits them, has what I said in the beginning, the experiential learning cycle with the reflect, connect, grow questions. And that's what we call a debrief. And so when you debrief, you're talking about what happened, why did that happen, and what are you going to do about it? And how do you want to grow in an intentional direction? So this specific order of these activities is in a playlist. So like Spotify, a playlist. And they're done in this particular order for the particular outcome of first regulating, then relating, and then reasoning. And I believe and have seen when I've experimented with it, that if I tried to do a higher level problem solving activity, that the students probably wouldn't be as successful if I didn't front load it with some of these other activities first. So creating that shared sense of community, creating trust between people. And we have playlists on the platform of all kinds of different outcomes. So while this playlist is specifically to illustrate the point that I'm making here with the CASTLE standards and the neurosequential model of therapeutics, we also have other playlists that can either be a collection of activities, say tag games or brain boosts instead of brain breaks, brain boosts, or even just like games that you can play with a deck of cards, as opposed to these activities in this order will really help build community. These activities in this order will really help build trust. And so,
Hey,
yeah.
Hey, Bryn, I was able to scan that QR code. I
Yeah.
was able to download this right onto my phone and log in with Google super fast. And all I did was search for LTC and the playlist came up, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Can you throw that QR code up on screen
Yeah.
again for anyone who may have missed it?
Who wants to play along? Absolutely. Yeah, so the other thing that I was thinking is that Matt and I can play these games. Don't know if you want to see them play out. I don't know if we want to skip all the way to paper tear, because it's one of my favorites and I think it really does illustrate the point. But Matt, do you happen to have a scrap piece of paper somewhere?
Well, as a matter of fact, I do.
All right. And everybody who's listening at home, if you have a piece of paper nearby or can imagine one in your mind's eye, the whole point of this is I'm going to give you verbal directions and I want you to follow along, but I don't want you to let me see what you're doing with your paper. So Matt, could you please fold your paper in half?
Okay.
And then can you tear off the top right corner? And now can you fold your paper in half again? And this time, can you tear off the top left corner? Okay, we're going to fold it in half one more time. And I want you to tear off the top right corner. Okay, so now if you open your paper, does your paper look like mine? Oh, your poor background. I can't even see it.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. Does yours have a hole in the middle? Oh, yeah.
Yes,
No,
I have a hole in the middle.
Your
I
background
have,
keeps blanking out your paper.
sorry, I have a hole in the middle. I have the top right and top left corner, and I have what looks like a little bite taken out of the side, but my bottom two corners and all the way across the bottom of my page are untouched.
That is brilliant. So some similarities, but not exactly the same as mine, hey?
Exactly.
All right. So the way that I use this as a team building activity is I will say, okay, that was round one. Why do our papers look different? Why didn't you do things the exact same way as me?
I held the paper after it was folded. I held it in a different way. I might have folded it more hamburger style or hot dog style, depending
Oh.
on how I was holding it too.
Hmm. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can kind of debrief it in that, okay, well, I did it right. You must have done it wrong. And what, why didn't you do it the way that I did it? Oh, there's more than one way to do things. Oh, but when else in the classroom do we come up against maybe somebody having a different idea of how we're supposed to do things than what I thought? Have you ever misinterpreted the teacher's instructions before? How do you handle when that happens? And so, okay, so maybe we need to be very clear on hamburger versus hot dog folds. So then we would try it, change it, try it again. So round 2, Matt and I come up with some agreements on how to interpret the directions so that we're not making assumptions and we're making the explicit or the implicit explicit. And then we'd see after another round if we interpreted the directions the same. How I would do this in a class is I would have them pair up and I'd say, you know what, it's okay if it's not the same as mine. I want your goal to be the same as your partner's. And so then as a pair, they're trying to interpret the directions correctly. Or it could be the whole class to be the same as mine. So depending on what your goal is, you could do it that way. And then maybe even you do a third round after they do some process improvement discussions and like, oh yeah, no, I definitely got my rights and lefts mixed up. Or, I thought the top was closer to me and and so I was holding it this way. And then you as the educator can change it up with the different directions. And so in the app, there's different facilitator tips, tricks. There's reflection questions that you can help debrief it. Debriefing is really interesting because we say that you don't learn from experience. You learn from reflecting on experience. And the best example of that is that you don't learn how to ride a bike by being able to do it. You learn how to ride a bike by not knowing how to ride a bike for a long time. And it's always, we've got a big thing on the school that I'm at, mistakes help us learn. And it's just so true. But to create an environment for your students where mistakes are okay and failing is okay and learning is the goal. And so this is just a very simple activity where you can teach a bigger, broader lesson that hits on those CASEL social emotional learning standards. And in here we have variations as well. So a lot of our activities have variations for in-person, for virtual, for while physical distancing. Recently we had to talk about what is our communicable disease playbook because we're, moving past COVID and into, I was like, okay, are we addressing COVID the same way that we would address mono, hand, foot, and mouth, strep? We had a huge strep outbreak in our school. And, so how would we modify these activities? The platform came out, you guys, on March 2nd of 2020. So we quickly had to pivot to create a wide variety of variations of activities. But our goal is to have this really comprehensive list of things that can be done in real time. And so there's a whole lot of other features about the app. But the thing that I do want to say, because this isn't an infomercial, is that we have a free version of the platform, and that really, truly our mission is to democratize access. And so there are premium features, but you do not have to pay to use the app and to access this information. I'm also going to drop in the chat, there is our website. We've got some blog articles and some calendars that help plan and fit social emotional learning into your day. I actually have a TED Talk that talks about the difference between experiential. If you Google TEDx and my name, one will come up. But it talks about the difference between experiential social emotional learning versus social emotional learning, the difference of being told top down to be a good friend versus creating an environment where you get to practice activities so that students are intrinsically motivated to be that good friend and to practice what that looks like, feels like.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Certainly, for people who love doing this, like myself, a lot of my colleagues are not quite as practiced at using them. And a sticky point is always the debrief. How do you read what's happened? How do you lead the conversation to get them to understand what they've learned? Any tips on running a debrief?
Yeah, I think that debriefing can be really scary, especially for traditional teachers. They teach the way they were taught, and you have the information and you deliver it, and that's the end of the conversation. But the beautiful thing about a debrief is it gives our students buy-in and it lets them explore ideas in this time where their brains are really expanding and developing in a way that they haven't in years. And by talking through some activities and what happened, it also can be very preventative to help manage behaviors. But the thing about debriefing is that you have to be comfortable letting the conversation happen. And same with me, I have a lot of colleagues that don't want to open things up for discussion because they don't know where it's going to go. But if you follow that experiential learning cycle and just ask what, so what, now what, it's very useful to bringing the learning back around and tying it back to that experience and really solidifying that learning and transferring it from the experience to other areas of the classroom. And at Kikori, we recognize that debriefing is often one of the hardest things. And so all of our activities have questions that follow that same order, that what, so what, now what becomes reflect on what happened, connect it to other areas of your life, and grow in an intentional direction from there.
That's brilliant. I'm going to encourage more people to think along those lines and see if they can be more free in running a debrief. Thank you, Bryn.
Yeah, thank you, Steve.
And I think I was able to find your TED Talk at Nicolette.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Thank
that's
you.
in the chat now.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Anybody else? Like, y'all have me. What do you want to know? What do you need to know? What would make your tomorrow better?
I was a middle school teacher, team leader, and trainer for many years before coming to LTC. And I can remember struggling to come up with those activities to start advisory sessions in the morning, to get kids working together and talk to each other and things like this. And not just that, but to really explore, what kids were dealing with. And this is such a great tool to help teachers, extend a hand.
Yeah.
Needed. Do you have any, any tips for teachers when those, maybe uncomfortable situations might arise in response to some of these activities.
Yeah. I always say that like it is more important to feel like you can put a full stop, all stop, freeze than it is to follow something that you feel like you have to like complete if there is a risk of physical, emotional, or psychological safety. So if the conversation starts going someplace where you feel like one of those three could be compromised, you're the grown-up, full stop. Just cut it off. Everybody take a step back, take a breather. And if you are dysregulated, you're not going to be able to bring that back around for them either. So kids are resilient. Kids are not going to forget. But if you're not in the right frame of mind to finish that conversation, stop it. And then go collect your thoughts, and in a day, a week, whatever, bring it back around and try and address it again in a way that you are more comfortable or feel like you have control with. My other suggestion is tie it back to what's happening here. You know what? There's a lot of things outside of our classrooms, our buildings that we cannot control. But what we bring into the classroom is what we choose. And they can leave it at the door. So physically, metaphorically, whatever it is, like say, you know what, hey, there's a lot of big stuff going on in our community, but we don't have to talk about that here. This is a safe place for learning. Or there's a lot of really big stuff that's going on at home, and I want to hug you and I want to love on you and I want to address that. But also, like, here's a safe space where let's keep this contained here. But be authentic. Kids will see through you if you're not. So, you know, there are some faking it until you make it, but also like just be real. And if there's something that you don't know, don't make it up. Kids would respect you way more if you just stop and say, I'll get back to you, or bring it back later if you're not being your best self.
Cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions at this point?
Can I just ask, because I'm not really fond of the word regulate, I've been racking my brains what I might use in front of the kids. And I've come up with tune in. Let's tune in. Wondering about your thoughts about that.
I think that it doesn't matter what it is, as long as it resonates with you and your audience, you and your participants. I think that there is so much power in a common language that if I know what it means and you know what it means, it doesn't matter if anybody else knows. That as long as we have a shared language and a mutual understanding of how that triggers, it's fine. I actually have a funny story for in my home. My husband, I was a stay-at-home mom with my kids for years and years. And my husband came home and he goes, "You look like you're at the end of your wits." But I thought he said the end of my lips. And I was like, "What do you mean I'm at the end of my lips?" And so now, whenever one of us is dysregulated or not tuned in, we say that we're at the end of our lips. And it doesn't have to make sense to other people. We know immediately what it means.
Love that. Okay, I'm going to carry on using tune in because we do get it, and it sounds friendly too.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense if you're tuning into yourself, tuning into your body. I think grounding is another good word. Taking a grounding breath, like feeling grounded, like even if it's putting both feet on the floor, sometimes instead of running or walking, or even like having legs crossed and one leg bouncing, but being very intentional about grounding yourself.
Like that too. Thank you.
hit a few more slides. So again, Picori is a community-driven platform with actually thousands of validated activities. We've taken publications and we've put them all on a searchable digital platform by a bunch of different authors with a lot of different perspectives and expertises. We're aligned with standards, including CASEL, 21st Century Skills, and the Sustainable Development Goals from UNESCO. We activate that experiential learning cycle of play, reflect, connect, grow. We have debriefing for every activity. And so this is an example debrief for optimism. Extra benefits are that if we're missing something, I would love for you to create your own. And we have a lower cost, easy entry, full comprehensive curriculum for summer schools. So it is available now. It's called our Summer Spark program. And so you can inquire about that on our website. Some people have said some nice things about us. And sharing is caring. So a zero cost way to support this platform created by educators for educators without a whole lot of other resources is simply engaging with our social media. So we've got a TikTok as well as LinkedIn and Facebook. And then we have a Picori community in the Facebook community. So our closed group is a really great place to ask for help and ask for resources. So, hey, I'm a such and such classroom teacher. I'm a school social worker. This is what behavior I'm seeing. What have you seen works? And it's a really great collaborative, safe place to ask those questions and have experts within the field be able to answer.